Do you ever feel like your project goes in a completely different direction? Sometimes it falls off the rails, and other times it ends up being completely inspired. Join me and find out how I switch gears to create this layered Zentangle card. The theme this month is Color of the Seas for the WOW fan page challenge. And so I decided to create a background panel with some clear texture paste that you see here and two Earth Sparkles glitters. I have Mahi Mahi and Sargasm here, and these are just gorgeous. And I absolutely love the background that I created here and will certainly use it in another project, but it didn't end up getting used today. If you're not familiar with WOW Sparkles, they are just glitter. There's no embossing powders in these glitters, and so you need to use them with some type of wet or adhesive medium. So this clear texture paste is great for that. You can also use like score tape and sprinkle it over score tape, burnish it in. That's a great way to use it. Here I've just spread both of the colors over a stencil, and look how gorgeous this is. Beautiful, and I think this goes great with the colors of the sea. So I wanted to share this with you. This is how I started off my card making process, and then I felt like, let me cover up this extra glitter paste so that I can keep it nice and fresh. So I just put a wet baby wipe on top of it, and I grabbed another piece of cardstock and decided to do some tangling. I started off with a spiral and thought I would do something along the lines of a nautilus to go with the sea theme. And at this point, I was thinking I was still going to use that glitter background because it had the color of the sea, the color of the sand. I thought it would be a great background. So I'm just adding some more spirals to this to kind of add the sections of the nautilus. And then what I'll do is I'll darken up some of these areas and add some weight to it. I'm using a Sakura Micron 01 pen. And then I'll also pull out a Pigma micron pen, and that's an 05. It's a little bit thicker, which to be honest, I kind of prefer the thicker, darker black lines. So I was feeling the need to tangle because my husband and I are, since actually Thanksgiving, have been working on putting hardwood floors down in our upstairs hallway and then replacing our carpeted stairs with hardwood floors. We've never done that before. We actually gutted an entire house in our 20s, but we've never done stairs before, and it has been a beast, you guys. We've run into some hiccups, and just right before I sat down to draw, we ran into a huge one. We bought the wrong railing. It does not fit our balusters at all, which is ridiculous. So we already have it cut. I stained it all. We put it in. We just didn't even check it, you guys. We didn't even think to check it. So yeah, I was feeling the need to relax and the need to draw. And what do you guys do when you're stressed? Do you draw? Do you color? Do you do crafting and artistic types of things? Or do you do other things to relax? Let me know in the comments down below. For me, I definitely like to just kind of fall into a meditative state with some Zentangle. So both of these patterns that I've done here, this little kind of spiral nautilus here, it's not an actual Zentangle pattern. It's more of a hybrid of, I would say, Marasu. I'll put a link to that one down below so that you can see that one. This is not exactly the same. I usually end up changing up Zentangle patterns to make it the way that I like it and kind of customize it. And then these other little black things that you're seeing are called fescue. And then I'm just adding an aura line onto those. So again, this isn't an actual pattern as far as I know, other than the fescue. I'm just adding kind of some echoed lines on the front and the back of these to make it look more like a leafy structure. And then I'm adding an aura to the stem so that the stem has a little more weight to it. So at this point, you guys, I'm drawing this and I'm like, I'm going to have to fussy cut this out. Like, that is a scary thought with all these little tiny little stems and stuff, but there really was no other way around it. And then I was thinking, I wonder if I could have drawn this on vellum. I still probably would have had to fussy cut most of it out. Or I could have just done a shape die and that would have solved the problem. So you could try drawing this on vellum instead of white cardstock. If you do it on vellum, instead of using a Micron 01 pen or the Pigma pen, what you would want to use is a micro perm pen or an Identa pen. Both of those are also made by Sakura, and they have an ink in them that is good for non-porous surfaces. So like your vellum, you could draw on Yupo with that. You could draw on top of acrylic paint. Like let's say you did some prints on a jelly press, you could use those for your tangling and drawing. So the microperm pens and the Identa pens are great to have in your stash. I highly recommend those. But yeah, you could try that instead of the fussy cutting that I'm going to have to do with this. I'm just going to fill in this little area here so that it looks like you can see down into the Nautilus shell. And then I will color this up. Now, where this project really started to derail, like I think I could have pulled this image off with the glitter background if I hadn't chosen the colors that I did for coloring. So I have my Polychromos pencils here. Now, I made the mistake when I purchased my Polychromos pencils of buying the 36 pencil set. At the time, I was in this place of I don't want to have full set syndrome. I definitely don't need all of the pencils. What I've found, you guys, is that 36 is not enough. There's just not enough colors. Specifically, there aren't enough light colors in the 36 set. So I wish I had gotten a larger set, and probably what I will do at some point is just buy some individual pencils from the open stock of the lightest colors that they have. Like I need a cream and a blush. And because I had to use such bright colors on this, it does not go with that background at all anymore. Like the yellow, I could have gotten away with that Venetian red that I used, but that yellow is just so bright, it doesn't go with the background. So then at this point I was like, okay, I can't use that background, so I'm going to go all out with the colors here, and we'll just add all the colors. So these little things coming out of the Nautilus are like rainbow colored. They're teal, green, and that Venetian or Pompeian red. So super colorful. And then I'm just using a warm gray pencil just to blend all of those colors together. Now that just does end up becoming somewhat of a moot point, the coloring on these, because I do end up heat embossing those. So I'm going to fussy cut this out, you guys. And I got to say, I was pretty impressed with my fussy cutting skills. I don't, as a general rule, I really don't fussy cut. I find it to be really challenging. But this went better than expected. Here I have a Hero Arts background stamp set. I'll have all of the products linked down below. I can't remember the name of this off the top of my head. And I'm just going to ink this up with some black ink. I'll grab a piece of scrap paper just so I don't get ink all over my hands, because I'll definitely transfer that to my card. And this is a really fun background. Then I went and added that glitter to it, and it was not so fun anymore. I don't like that at all. Mostly because it's too abstract, and like the glitter doesn't go along with the waves. So I bagged that. That went in the trash. The pretty one with the stencil I saved. And then I drew a little bit more on, I restamped another background and drew a little bit more. Unfortunately, I did not hit record on those. But those little colorful things are the same as before, and the little circles are just that. They're a circle filled in with black with another circle around it. So super easy to do. I've done that in a lot of previous videos. So then I decided that to add a little color to these waves, I would heat emboss them. So I grabbed the Wow embossing pen, and this is Primary Beautiful. You can see that I skipped one of those lines there, so I'll just add that in. And I'm going to add this Primary Beautiful in a couple places. So I'll go ahead and heat set that. And if any of my lines went over the stamped image, that's going to be totally okay, because Primary Beautiful is a translucent embossing powder. So you'll still be able to see the black line through that translucent embossing powder. So I'm liking the look of this. I'm going to add a little bit more blue at the top. And then I decided that these little guys were just too dark on that dark background up there. So I added a couple lines and added some opaque bright white, and that's the superfine powder that I'm using there. And I just used a brush, a dry paintbrush, just to get off a little bit of that stuff going down the center of the stem. This brightens up those a little bit so you can see them more clearly on the background and they don't get so lost. And then I decided to do that to these as well. And I wish I had just left those like they were. That does brighten it up, but I feel like I lost all of the pink with that. I went ahead and added a couple more lines and then added the primary Beautiful to those as well. And you can see some of the other colors through the primary Beautiful since it's translucent, which gives it a pretty cool look. So I was pretty happy with that. So I'm just checking the composition and seeing how it looks. I feel like it needs that kind of dusky pink color. So I'm sprinkling on Giddy's Power here, and this is one of the Alexandra Rinky collaboration powders, and that line is just gorgeous, you guys. There are colors in there that are just, they seem to go with everything. They're just multi-use colors. If you haven't checked out that line yet, I definitely would. It's one of my favorite lines of colors. And that one is also translucent. So that goes great with the Nautilus shell. We've added some texture, a little bit of color, and this is looking like a pretty cool card. But you know, this card is not done without shading. So I just grabbed a pencil. This one is from Zentangle, so it's a little short pencil without an eraser, but you can use any household pencil that you have. And then I have a tortillon. You could also use a paper stump. If you don't have either of those, you could also even kind of blend out the shading with a Q-tip or your finger. Really, you can use whatever you like. And then I'm going to add a deeper shadow up top here. And this is just going to add a ton of dimension to the card. It makes it a little more interesting and separates those waves so that you have more areas to look at. Right there you can see it's a pretty thin line of shading. So here you can see I'm holding the pencil parallel to the paper, getting a pretty thick line of graphite on the page. And then I'm just going to keep working that out with the tortillon until it's nice and blended. I don't necessarily want a sharp edge of graphite. I want it to have a super blended edge, but I wanted quite a bit of graphite in this space to really recess that darker section. I'll also add a bit of a drop shadow around some of the drawn elements as well, the tangled elements. But look how cool that looks, you guys. So I'll keep adding shadow. Now I should have shaded around the Nautilus before embossing. If I had done that, I could have had that shadow show through the translucent powder, but I didn't. So here you see me using a Copic marker on top of my embossing powder. Now that can put your nibs at risk for getting clogged up, so do that at your own risk. I have heard that it can ruin your nibs. Hasn't really happened to me, but you should be aware of that. You shouldn't really use your Copic markers or alcohol markers on top of embossing powder. Here's the finished card, and it's a completely different look than what I was going for, all because I had a limited amount of colors in my color pencil set. So you really just have to use the supplies that you have and work with it. And if you have to change your design or come up with something else, so be it. I think this card turned out way cooler than probably it would have if I had used the original background. So I hope this is a good reminder to just use the supplies that you have and make it work for your situation. If you need to change your design, that's totally okay. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration.